poem come to feel as though it has always existed, as though no one ever sat down and wrote it at all? In the Bleak Midwinter arrives every December on the wind of 1,000 carol services. It's snow falling, snow on snow, timeless as the season itself. Its words have become so familiar that it can become easy to forget the woman who wrote them. The poem first appeared under the title A Christmas Carol in the American magazine Scribner's Monthly in January 1872. It acquired a new life after Christina Rossetti's death when Gustav Holst set it to music for the English hymnal in 1906. Harold Darke composed his own much-loved setting a few years later. Behind those familiar words was a London poet whose apparently quiet life contained fierce convictions, frustrated longings, and unexpected humour, and an imagination capable of producing some of the strangest and most unsettling poetry of the Victorian age. Hello, and a huge welcome to the Sunday Echo with me, Cate Field. On this channel, I release quiet wanderings on Sundays and Wednesdays. I explore art and artists, writers and dancers, and faith and their fascinating stories, and I am delighted that you are here. Today, we're going to be spending a bit of time with Christina Rossetti. We're going to be exploring her childhood in a household filled with Italian poetry and revolutionary politics, the deep Anglican faith that shaped her choices, the longing wit and mystery of her poems, and the remarkable artistic circle that completely surrounded her. We shall also encounter a woman who's sometimes disappeared behind the sombre portraits made of her. A professional writer with a sharp intelligence, a lively sense of humour, and a firm understanding of what she was prepared to accept from other people. Let's explore a childhood among exiles. Christina Georgina Rossetti was born on the 5th of December 1830 at 38 Charlotte Street near Fitzroy Square in London. She was the youngest of 4 remarkable children. Her father, Gabriel Rossetti, was an Italian poet and scholar who had been involved in the revolutionary upheavals in Naples. He fled the city in 1821, eventually arriving in London, where he established himself as a teacher of Italian and later became professor at King's College. Her mother, Frances Polidori, was of Italian and English parentage. Frances was also the sister of John Polidori, the physician who had travelled with Lord Byron and written The Vampire, which is one of the earliest vampire stories in English. The Rossetti household was bilingual, literary, and politically charged. Italian exiles and intellectuals visited the family home, filling the room with conversation about poetry, religion, and the struggle for Italian freedom. Christina's elder siblings were Maria, William Michael, and Dante Gabriel. All 4 children wrote, drew, and contributed to the family journals. Christina composed her earliest known poem at the age of 11, and her maternal grandfather printed a small collection of her verse on his private press while she was still in her teens. When Dante Gabriel and his friends established the Pre-Raphaelite journal The Germ in 1850, Christina contributed poems under the pseudonym Ellen Alleyne. She was 19 years old. Her childhood, therefore, gave her a peculiar inheritance. She grew up in London among adults who carried memories of another country, a lost home sustained through language, art, and conversation. Later, Christina would write repeatedly about longing for a country that remained beyond ordinary sight, the kingdom of heaven. It's tempting to hear a faint echo of one form of exile within another, though the warmth and intellectual excitement of the Rossetti household existed alongside considerable strain and stress. Christina experienced recurring illness and periods of emotional upheaval, and her father's physical and mental health deteriorated during the 1840s. His eyesight failed and he became unable to teach, and the family's financial position grew increasingly precarious. Christina's mother and sister found work as teachers and governesses, while William entered employment with the civil service. The family survived through a collective effort in which the women carried a substantial share of the responsibility. It was during these difficult years that the two great forces of Christina's life became firmly established: her religious faith and her poetry. So for her, the two were deeply intertwined. Let's just turn now to the fire of faith. In the early 1840s, Christina began attending Christ Church in Albany Street with her mother and her sister Maria. The church was closely associated with the Oxford movement, a current within the Church of England that sought to recover ancient traditions of worship, sacramental theology, and the devotional practices of the early church. This movement eventually helped shape what became known as Anglo-Catholicism. The Rossetti women embraced this religious life with great seriousness. Christina's faith included regular worship, prayer, devotional readings, and close relationship with the high church clergy. She read the Tractarian poets, including John Keble and Isaac Williams, and annotated her own copy of Keble's The Christian Year quite extensively. Her faith influenced her daily routines, her understanding of illness, of suffering, her attitude towards money, and her relationships with other people. But it also brought her into practical contact with some of the most vulnerable women in Victorian society at the time. So from around 1859, she volunteered at the St Mary Magdalene Penitentiary in Highgate, an institution for women seeking to leave prostitution. We know relatively little about the precise nature of her work, but some scholars have cautiously connected this experience with the themes of temptation, sisterhood, and rescue that appear in Goblin Market. Her religious convictions also shaped the course of her private life. Shortly before her 18th birthday, she accepted a proposal of marriage from James Collinson, who's a painter and original member of the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood. The engagement ended in 1850 after Collinson returned to the Roman Catholic Church. Years later, Christina developed a deep attachment to the scholar and translator Charles Bagot Cayley. Cayley proposed marriage, but Christina declined, apparently because his religious beliefs did not accord closely enough with her own. But they did remain devoted friends, and she grieved deeply when he died in 1883. It can be easy to describe these choices solely in terms of sacrifice, as though Christina stood helplessly at the edge of a life that other people were permitted to enjoy. Her decisions also reveal a determination and agency, and this is really how I feel about this amazing woman. She knew the kind of spiritual companionship that she required and that she wanted. She didn't accept a marriage that would have violated her own personal conscience. The cost was real. Her poems suggest that renunciation did not remove desire. She understood longing. She really did. And she understood this longing from within herself. And this is one reason why I think her devotional poetry feels so emotionally alive. Earthly love and divine love move through the same imaginative landscape the gardens, the fruit, the locked doors, the thresholds, waiting rooms, the winter fields, the distant countries, they all kind of create this fantastic embroidery. But let's now just explore the strange world of Goblin Market, because it is very, very odd. In 1862, Christina Rossetti published Goblin Market and Other Poems, a collection that established her reputation. The title poem tells the story of two sisters, Laura and Lizzie, who hear the cries of goblin merchants selling fruit of impossible sweetness. Come buy your orchard fruits, come buy, come buy. Laura tastes the fruit and becomes consumed by desire for more. And when she can no longer hear the goblin, she begins to fade. Lizzie enters the market to save her sister. She withstands the goblin's threats and violence and returns carrying the means of Laura's restoration. The poem moves from the rhythm of a children's rhyme, if you like, filled with lists and repetition and animal noises and the luscious descriptions of fruit. Its imagery carries suggestions of appetite and commerce, of addiction and of sexual temptation, of sacramental sacrifice and redemption. Rossetti resisted attempts to tie the poem to one definitive explanation, which is probably why it does seem very strange in lots of ways. But the surviving evidence about whether she intended it specifically for children is contradictory, which seems peculiarly appropriate for a work that continually slips between fairy tale and nightmare. Critics have spent more than a century attempting to decide what the goblin fruit represents. Perhaps the deeper power of the poem lies in its refusal to settle into one single meaning. Whatever the fruit may represent, the emotional centre of the poem is an act of rescue. Lizzie enters danger on her sister's behalf. She endures humiliation and violence and then carries that healing home. The final lines look back on the story from later life. So from there is no friend like a sister in calm and stormy weather. Rossetti's great fairy tale places its faith in the courage and fidelity of women. Laura is saved because Lizzie believes her and she stands beside her and refuses to abandon her. That tension between desire and restraint runs throughout the whole of Christina Rossetti's poetry. In her poem Remember, she addresses someone she loves and asks to be remembered after death. Remember me when I am gone away, gone far away into the silent land. As the sonnet unfolds, the speaker gradually releases the beloved from this responsibility. She would prefer to be forgotten if remembering her causes sorrow. The poem is really powerful, and its power lies partly in this quiet change. Love becomes an act of relinquishment expressed in language so plain that its emotional discipline can almost pass unnoticed. In her poem A Birthday, we have a different story. It opens with a cascade of joyful images. My heart is like a singing bird whose nest is in a watered shoot. My heart is like an apple tree whose boughs are bent with thickest fruit. The poem is sensuous, colourful and abundant. Silk, purple dyes, pomegranates, peacocks and golden fruit fill the imagined space. Rossetti is often remembered as a poet of winter, restraint and death, but she also really understood radiance and excess. When joy comes in her poetry, it arrives richly decorated. Her sonnet sequence, Monna Innominata, published in 1881, explores a love that cannot be completely fulfilled. Its title means the unnamed lady. The sequence is sometimes read as an echo of Rossetti's relationship with Charles Cayley, although it reaches far beyond private autobiography. Rossetti was responding to a long European literary tradition in which male poets addressed idealized women. Dante wrote of Beatrice, Petrarch wrote of Laura. Their beloved women became celebrated figures, yet their own voices remain largely unheard. In Monna Innominata, the unnamed woman becomes the poet. She speaks for herself. She reflects upon love and memory and separation and spiritual duty and desire. She is the thinking subject of the story, capable of judgment and hesitation and refusal. Rossetti creates a voice for the woman who has previously existed as an image in somebody else's poem. I think this is absolutely fascinating. There is another Christina Rossetti who become obscured by the long black dresses and the solemn portraits and the devotional poems, because she could be wonderfully funny. In No Thank You, John, she addresses a persistent admirer with admirable clarity. I never said I loved you, John. Why will you tease me day by day? The speaker calmly explains that she does not love John and never encouraged him, and will not be persuaded through repetition. She offers friendship, provided that he can behave sensibly, and ends by asking that the matter be considered closed. It's a poem about boundaries, written with wit and precision. The woman who is so often pictured retreating into the shadows was perfectly capable of closing the door herself. In Winter, My Secret, we see this more playful aspect. In the poem, its speaker repeatedly suggests that she possesses a secret that refuses to tell us what it is. I tell my secret? No, indeed, not I. The excuses continue. The day is too cold, the door must remain shut. Perhaps the secret will be revealed in summer. Perhaps there is no secret at all. The poem turns concealing into a kind of game, and Rossetti understood that withholding could carry its own power. And I absolutely love it. I read it when I was at school, and our English teacher, she made us kind of read it out loud. And it was when we were reading it out loud that we realised just how funny it is. So she kind of carries this power and chose what the reader was allowed to know. And this makes it difficult to treat every poem as a transparent record of her private life. She could create a speaker, establish an atmosphere, and then deliberately lead the reader into another path of uncertainty. Christina Rossetti spent much of her life close to one of the most celebrated artistic circles of the 19th century. Dante Gabriel Rossetti became a central figure in the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood, and the family's home was visited by writers and artists and musicians and critics. Christina modelled for several of her brother's early works, including The Girlhood of Mary Virgin and Ecce Ancilla Domini. His extraordinary depiction of the Annunciation, I mean, it really is quite extraordinary. Mary doesn't appear as the composed, majestic figure familiar from Renaissance paintings. She's shown in a narrow white room, sitting upright on a low bed as the angel Gabriel approaches. Her body seems tense and apprehensive. The angel offers a white lily, while a strip of vivid blue fabric introduces the traditional colour associated with the Virgin. Christina's face gives the painting much of its emotional uncertainty. This is an Annunciation that appears strange and intimate, even a bit alarming. The moment in which an ordinary life is interrupted by an overwhelming demand. And there's something fascinating by this relationship between the painted Christina and the Christina who wrote Monna Innominata. In her brother's religious pictures, she becomes a silent female figure seen through a man's artistic imagination. In her own poetry, the silent woman speaks. Although Christina lived close to the pre-Raphaelite world, she didn't participate fully in its social life. She once described herself as occupying a shady crevice, a phrase that has contributed to the image of her as a retiring and secluded figure. Her physical health undoubtedly restricted her. Her religious commitments also set her apart from some members of her brother's circle, but her apparent retirement shouldn't be mistaken for creative insignificance. She sustained friendships and maintained a substantial correspondence and developed a long professional relationship with her publisher. By the final years of her life, she was recognised as one of the most distinguished poets of her generation. Following Tennyson's death in 1892, her name appeared in the public discussion surrounding the vacant position of Poet Laureate. She was never formally appointed, but the suggestion itself was quite remarkable in a period when the office was assumed to belong to a man. In 1872, Christina Rossetti was diagnosed with Graves' disease, a disorder of the thyroid. The illness altered her appearance and affected her health for the remainder of her life. In 1891, she was diagnosed with breast cancer and underwent surgery. The cancer later returned. She continued to write, read, and work on the devotional prose as her health declined. She died at her home in Torrington Square on the 29th of December 1894, shortly after her 64th birthday. She is buried in Highgate Cemetery in London, and she left behind a remarkable body of work. Love poetry, children's verse, riddles and devotional writings, comical poems, sonnets, fairy tales, and beloved carols. Perhaps this is the hidden fire of Christina Rossetti, the warmth of desire held within a disciplined language, the flash of humour beneath the serious portraits, the independent intelligence within a life often described through illness and renunciation. Her poems endure because the tensions within them remain alive. Faith doesn't erase longing. Longing doesn't extinguish faith. Joy, grief, appetite, restraint, humour, and mystery are all allowed to inhabit the same imaginative space. In the Bleak Midwinter ends by asking what the speaker can give. What can I give him, poor as I am? And the answer is simple. Yet what I can, I give him. Give my heart. Christina Rossetti spent a lifetime considering what it might mean to make such a gift. Her poems reveal that a human heart is rarely simple. It carries love, fear, humour, conviction, secrecy, and desire. And perhaps the offering becomes meaningful because of all of those things. They are all present in the giving. Thank you so much for joining me today. And I'll see you next time when I wonder about more fascinating people. Take care. Bye-bye.